Doreen Grand-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grand-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. A person who's written in and said, for some context, I live in a basement apartment with my husband and our dog, who, as well as being a service animal, loves kids and is very mild-mannered. We have been having issues with our upstairs neighbors since November in regards to loud stomping, furniture being slammed, and loud screaming. I have been up to talk to them about it several times, and last night I reached my breaking point. I went upstairs to ask them to please stop stomping, as my husband works early and was trying to sleep for work. When she opened the door, I could see that the small 2-bedroom apartment had no less than 6 adults and 4 kids inside of it. I calmly asked them to stop the stomping, and since this is the 3rd time I have had to ask in the last 4 months, the next time it got this bad, I would be lodging a complaint with the property management company. My neighbor had a friend over who has a 3-year-old who is on the spectrum and was the one stomping the hardest and causing most of the noise. Her friend gives a sour look on her face and started chirping at me from across the room. The friend said, "You live in a basement apartment and he has autism. What the heck do you expect me to do? There's going to be some noise." And then our person responded back with, "Okay, I get that I live in a basement apartment, but stomping until picture frames fall off the walls is a different story." And the friend said, "Well, he has autism. What the heck?" And I'm saying heck, that's not what they said. "What the heck do you expect me to do?" And our person said, "Put some slippers on him, or maybe secure some pillows to his feet. If absolutely has to stomp his feet, lay him on the sofa and kick the back of it, or let him kick the wall if he needs to kick something hard." And the friend got all exasperated and sighed and said, "Well, he likes dinosaurs and he gets excited when he sees them. And when he gets excited, he stomps his feet." So our person said, "Then don't show him a movie with dinosaurs." And the friend snorted and said, "You just don't get it. He has autism." And our person said, "No, I get it. I work with kids with special needs for the last 3 years. I work with a kid who loves to stomp. And when he needed to, I would wrap his feet in foam and let him go to town on a sound dampening mat I picked up for him to stomp on." And that person said, "Well, I guess he can quiet it down a bit. I want to be a good neighbor, but this is excruciating." They're saying to us, "Please help." Lots there.
Yeah.
Sounds like almost World War III and between the apartment mates. Where do you want to start?
But I mean, I want to start by saying, like, what? And I think this is kind of a nice neighbor, actually. I mean, it's very thoughtful, I think, to write in to our show and ask for some
Yes.
feedback, and to, not to actually turn this into a war, right? And I think, I'll be honest, my feeling is you've given them some pretty good suggestions right there. Like, like, I wouldn't have even have thought about, like, wrap his feet in foam and let him do it that way. Like, these are pretty good suggestions. And I feel like you are actually being sympathetic to what's going on. It is difficult. There's no question that when you have a child who has autism, has some sensory issues going on, a lot of times kids will express their excitement by jumping up and down, and that sort of stuff can be very difficult for neighbors. There's no question about it. I am generally of the mind that you can always take a child's most preferred behavior and turn it into a reinforcer, use it as a reinforcer. So, in this case, for instance, if he likes dinosaurs, I really would then take that activity, whatever the activity is that involves dinosaurs, outside maybe, and let him run around and enjoy it somewhere else. There are things that we can do to modify or shape the behavior of our kids. And I think this downstairs neighbor has kind of handled it in a pretty nice way, I would say. What do you think, Shannon?
I do. What's funny for me is I've been on both sides of this equation.
Yeah.
I've been on equation where I've had my kid who, for whatever reason, somebody was asking for him to stop being himself, and that's hard. And I've been on the side where I've been the person saying you can't just expect everybody in the world. Um,
To
Listen,
accept.
I think we all know parents within the and I always say I love all autism parents. I do. But there are some autism parents that their child, it doesn't matter what behavior they engage in, they could hit your child. And if
Mhm.
you say, "Hey, that's not okay," they'll say, "Well, he has autism. What do you
Right,
expect me to do?"
right, right,
And
right.
I'm of the mindset of, well, no, that's not acceptable. Your child is going to end up institutionalized if we don't. You can't just allow them to slap my child and say, well, he has autism.
Yeah.
That's not on the list of symptoms,
Yep.
of
Yep.
criteria for autism. That is, I understand that there's a lot more happening there, but you can't just be like, oh, that's what happens, and go, what do you expect
Yeah.
either?
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And I have to say that, you can take any other disorder, and just put it in the same situation, and then I'm sure people will kind of agree with us. Because if you think about it, like I was just actually talking to one of my kids who has a roommate with certain mental health issues. And we were talking about the fact that, you want to be very empathetic or sympathetic to these kinds of situations. But at the same time, everybody has to also sort of take care of themselves and take care of their own personal space and their own rights and all that sort of stuff. And so there has to be a two-way dialogue there, even if there's a mental health issue ongoing, right? And with autism in particular, you made a really, really good point, Sharon, which is that these challenging behaviors are not a part of the diagnosis, right? Even if they were, but they're not. They're a side effect of not being able to communicate. And when we make excuses, like when we say, oh, he has autism, so therefore it's okay for him to do whatever behavior that in other conditions we would not allow him. If he
Yes.
didn't have the diagnosis, we would not allow him. What we're doing is we're essentially allowing the child to think that it is okay to have this challenging behavior in his life. And whether it's this neighbor or the next person who interacts him or a school teacher or a child at school or an adult when he's older, eventually in his life he will come across people who are just not going to be accepting of this, whatever it may be. And that's all that, with autism, with anything else, we all have to work towards fitting into the social norm, right? We just have
Yes.
to, because it's one society that we are living in. And there are certain accommodations that can be made. For instance, I love the fact that for autism, we now have sensory sensitive movies. I
Mhm.
think that's an amazing, easy accommodation and beautiful. I just think it's what a wonderful thing to do. And we only do that in this country. And I think it's fabulous, right? That's an easy accommodation to be made. But then there are other accommodations which just can't be made because they're intrusive upon someone else's rights to life, the same
Yeah.
similar rights. And so as much as I really encourage everyone to be, in fact, this week I did a couple of videos on TikTok about just the fact that kids with autism are very socially isolated. And if you come across someone, just be kinder, make an attempt to make a difference in their life. It's not a very hard thing to do. So I very much encourage people to be more sympathetic and more helpful. But at the same time, I feel like, as parents, we have an obligation to make sure our kids are not disturbing others where possible, wherever possible. And sometimes it's just very difficult. But, in this particular case, I think some accommodations could be made.
Absolutely. I think as you were talking, what I realized is that everybody has their line,
Yes.
right? When I
Yes.
think it's hard when you say things like, well, to a certain degree, you have to adhere to what society says. I know a part of me goes, I'm not
Yeah.
sure, because where is the line? Because I personally feel like if my child has free time and it's his free time and he wants to do this in
Mhm.
his free time, then to me he's not hurting anybody, and he should, if that's what he wants to do with his free time, he should be allowed to do that. And when we hear that, someone's like, well, it's disruptive to the other kids, I want to go, get over it, right?
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but at a certain point, when you're stomping so much that picture frames are coming off the wall,
Mhm.
for me, the line has been crossed, but I think the line is different for everybody.
That's true. There's no question. There's going to be a back and forth with what is actually disruptive to others. And honestly, if a child is quietly doing something in his own corner, it is not disruptive to others. Let's just face it, right? But I would have a different issue with the child doing this in his free time. It's not about being disruptive. It's just about like giving the child something more productive to do.
Yeah.
But that is a completely different thing. And I agree with you. I think, and that's why I said when we first started, I think the neighbor, the person who's writing into us, is actually being very kind of considerate in the
Yes.
sense that they're making some suggestions and they're coming to us and asking like, what else can I do here? Can you make,
Yeah.
help me, because I want to be a, I want to be a good neighbor. And I think that's really good. That's all we need, is people having good intent, and then
Yeah.
solutions can be found.
Well, here's the other thing that I don't get is that the friend who's got the child on the spectrum that says, "Well, I can't help him stomping," is just visiting the person who lives
That's
there.
true. Yeah. Yeah.
So go home
Yeah.
after 9 o'clock. Go home. Like, why do you have to be there anyway?
Yeah.
Like banging your drum, going, "I need accommodations for my child, and you can get over it." And your husband, who cares if he has to go to work? Go home
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stomp there, and you deal with your neighbor there.
Yeah.
If honestly, I go, what? She doesn't even live there. Go
Yeah.
home.
But you know what?
So
It's interesting, Shan, because when you first read it, I was thinking to myself, we look at it kind of through different lenses because the child has autism, right? But
mhm,
if there wasn't a child there with autism, and if there were other kids and they were just running around stomping, and a lot of kids love stomping, a lot of kids will get super excited. Typically, developing kids will get super excited if they see something on TV and they want to imitate it, and so on. What would we feel about the situation under those circumstances?
right.
We'd say, oh no, and obviously I'm sure a lot of people have this going on as well, where you have friends where the parenting style is very different than yours. Like they can either let their child be very spoiled, or they can let their child treat their child with extreme severity and strictness, and you're like, whoa, to both of those, right?
Yes.
And so there's a little bit of that as well, which is like some parents just feel that it is okay to just let your kids go wild. And so from their perspective, I can understand that they'd be like, why is this neighbor bothering us? They're just kids, And so like
Yeah.
there has to be a compromise on both sides.
Yes, I'm laughing because I'm going to tell this brief story that years ago, it was my birthday, and with a group of friends, we went out to a low key restaurant, very low key restaurant. And we said, everybody bring their kids because everybody had little kids. And everyone that was there, kind of tended to their own kids. But, there was one mom who just doesn't believe in that. She's
Yeah.
like, the collective universe will parent my children when we are in public. I'm on a break, is how she parented. And at one point, she had a little one that was like 3 that she was just letting go through the entire restaurant. He was taking food off. This is not a child on the spectrum, you guys, but he was taking food off of other people's plates. And like the waiter came up and said, "Ma'am, we need for you to police your child." And she was like, "Oh, he's fine." Then he went into the kitchen and got a knife. He came
Oh
back
my
with a
God.
knife and was sticking the knife in the back of my husband's chair when someone stopped him. And I finally said,
Oh my
"Parent
God.
your damn child." you know,
Oh my
I,
God.
I was like, do something. And she
Yeah.
was not happy with me. She was like, I
Yeah.
just don't, and that we didn't go to dinner with them a lot more. Now the child is older. I'm sure we could, but had a knife from the kitchen.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that is to me, that's the definition of you've abdicated parenting and have said, I'm not
Yeah.
participating. And
Yeah.
that was of course, that was the mom of a neurotypical child, which brings me right back to God only gives you what you can handle. And those of us who have been so blessed to have kids on the spectrum, it's because God knew that we could handle it, and she for sure could not.
Yeah.
There
you
all right. With a knife. It's like, what on earth? What can you say? We all still laugh about it. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
To subscribe, click here. And if you'd like to check out some more of our videos, click here.